Devs, episode 6, an episode where we finally got some answers, and there's a lot more answers than what was explicitly stated in the episode itself, and we're going to break it all down. But before we get to it, please subscribe to GameSpot Universe for more breakdowns of the things you love. And of course, this is your spoiler warning. We're going to talk about Devs, episodes 1 through 6, full spoilers.
We get another really ominous opening montage, slightly less gory than last episode. At least no one's getting their fingers broken. But this specific montage is really cool because it's set to the song Guinevere by Cosby, Stills, and Nash, which is... I'm not sure what Alex Garland has for this band, but they were also used in Annihilation. If you remember, Helplessly Hoping was kind of the theme of Annihilation, which was another Crosby, Stills, and Nash song. But also it kind of rounds out with a really beautiful shot of Forrest being, I guess, kind of consumed by flora, I guess. He's, laying in the grass and he's kind of got flowers growing over him, which really, it reminded me of Annihilation specifically, but it also kind of reminded me of that painting, that really famous, classic painting, Ophelia, where she's laying in the river. Mm-hmm. That shot of Forrest kind of evoked this image to me, which is, it's beautiful and sad, and it's about, the painting is about a woman who kills herself, which is, really sad and pointed in the context of Forrest and his mission to resurrect someone. So, maybe that's me just kind of going a little bit too far or too hard on, the art history symbolism, but that's what I got from this little montage.
Wow. That's a lot. What I got is that Forrest's daughter is really cute, and it's really sad that she died in a car crash.
Yes, you're not wrong.
No, I did think that it was interesting how he goes from this extremely happy moment where she's putting flowers and they're taking a nap or whatever, and there's a hard cut to a similar scene, and it's just the lighting and the expression on his face are different. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And it to me, it conveys a before and an after in his life, and it on the second time I watched the episode, it made me think of the conversation that he has later with Jamie about grief being this constant companion, mm-hmm. the friend who takes a on your head every morning or something. Also, the scene extremely reminded me of Midsummer. Obviously, I don't think Garland was probably intending that, but that is just very much in the forefront of my mind watching this. Definitely. The thing that really struck me about this intro is, unlike all of the previous opening montages, which showed things that we either encountered later in that episode, like the fight between Kenton and Anton, or even in later episodes where, with the primary colors on their faces that we talked about a lot, that turned out to be mm-hmm. from their early experiments with the summoning table or whatever as we called it. The ending shot there of him with the flowers looking extremely grim doesn't seem like a real thing. It seems like symbolism, right? That doesn't seem mm-hmm. like a scene that we're going to revisit later, or it's an expression of the multiple worlds that has been gradually brought into the show, like last episode with the multiple Katies. Here's a version of Forrest with his daughter, and here's a version of Forrest without his daughter. The first actual scene in this episode is Stuart arriving home, which is apparently an RV under a freeway overpass, which I would normally say is sad, but this seems like a choice that he's made, because based on Lyndon's severance package of $10 million, it seems like the people within Devs are adequately compensated. Mm-hmm. So, but we don't know why he would make this choice. It seems like maybe he's living in the past like Forrest is, but we just don't know why. Right.
It's really interesting to me because you have such an eclectic group of programmers, or at least the core cast of programmers in Devs. This moment really made me start to question what is everyone getting out of the experience of being in Devs. Obviously, if you were put in a room with the technology to experience both the past and the future, and know for certain that free will doesn't exist, it's gonna pretty radically shape your worldview, right? It's gonna change everything about the way you handle your daily life. Or at least the way you think you
right,
handle.
But why does Lyndon want back in so bad? We talked about this when we talked about Lyndon getting fired. It's the idea, just knowing that this is out there and having been so involved with it, it would be hard to walk away. Mm-hmm. But then also knowing that Forrest and Katie can see everything that happens. So, you know, first of all, why do you think that like ditching all your technology in LA and then hitching back up,
right,
you know that they can just watch you anytime they want. So and then on top of that, knowing that Forrest will kill you for sure and will not hesitate to do so. The way that Lyndon is acting is super weird, and so I agree with you. I wonder what is Lyndon getting or hoping to get out of this. Like what is the goal of devs in Lyndon's mind? You know,
it's really weird. Like I had this whole like debate with myself when I was watching the episode about like whether or not Lyndon is buying into the idea of the tramlines or like actively rejecting them by trying to like sneak back into devs. Because maybe he's
or just trying to do something that like they haven't anticipated.
Right, yeah.
Like just because you can't, it's the Dr. Manhattan thing, right? Just because you can be at any point in time, or you can sort of look into the future, look into the past, experience your whole timeline all at once, doesn't mean that you know exactly where to look at any given time. They would have to tune it to Stewart's trailer on the night of March whatever to see that Lyndon is there. And if they don't know to look there, then they might never get wise to this.
Right.
So I guess that makes sense. One thing Lyndon is definitely correct about is, in my opinion, is the fact that Forrest is not the person who should be steering this ship.
He's an entrepreneur. And he's crazy. He's obsessive. He kills people.
Our colleague Chastity got to actually speak with Alex Garland about the inspiration for Forrest, so we have a clip of that here where he's going to talk about where this character came from and what makes him tick.
I was interested in the idea that this guy wasn't a genius. Forrest is not a tech genius. In fact, one of the characters in the show says he's not a genius, he's an entrepreneur. And I think that we're quick to call these people geniuses, and I feel a bit suspicious of that, and I think the geniuses are often off camera, you know, behind the scenes. And so I was sort of interested in that, and I was also interested in his humanity. So it's a guy who has an enormous amount of money, an enormous amount of power, and in a way within his world an enormous amount of fame, but he suffered a tragedy. And it's how the human being part of him deals with the tragedy.
Lyndon also talks about something that we have speculated about in past breakdowns, which is in Lyndon's mind, the effect that adding the Everett multiple worlds math to the project has had proves that theory is reality, right? This relates to the conversation, the argument between Katie and her college professor, where she's saying the math and the blah, 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 everything else supports Everett. And her professor says, but reality doesn't support Everett. And we were speculating last week, well, maybe Katie's motivation is, for the devs project, is to demonstrate reality proving the multiple worlds theory. And in Lyndon's mind, that's exactly what occurred. Lyndon says,
there is no just one, that's the point. If he doesn't like it, he's got to change the laws of the fucking universe.
So this is something that I've been kind of arguing from the start, or at least from, you know, kind of the big reveal of Lyndon's math working, is the fact that it really does feel like this is one of Dev's only definitive answers. Like, the fact that this works means that Everett is the, you know, quote unquote right way to observe quantum computing or quantum physics or what have you. Like, that, in my head, that's what the whole Everett situation implied, or not even implied, but like definitively said.
Yeah, to play devil's advocate, I think one interesting way to look at it is that one version of it being correct isn't necessarily even the right way to look at it, right? Because Everett working doesn't necessarily disprove what Forrest wants.
Sure.
And it's correct in the sense that it made the picture and the sound more clear, which maybe a better way to put it would be to say it works. But I don't think, like, it doesn't work in the sense that it doesn't do what Forrest wants it to do.
Right.
Which as we learn in this conversation, Lyndon says to Stewart,
he's trying to resurrect his daughter.
When he said that, I started trying to figure out where within the devs system, where within this quantum machine and you know everything we've seen in there, you could resurrect a dead person.
Right.
And it wasn't until I watched it the second time, having seen the later scene in this episode where Katie has the mummified, effectively dead rat and the cheese on the summoning table, she's simulating a version of the rat that is still alive. And the picture and sound are clear, which means it's an alternate branch. It's an alternate world version of the rat. And that it clicked for me the second time I watched this scene of Lyndon saying Forrest wants to resurrect his dead daughter. My theory now is that Forrest wants the computer to simulate Amaya so completely and effectively that he can effectively have a virtual version of his daughter in crystal clear, image and sound quality. He can't hug her, he can't play frisbee with her, but he could talk to her. He could watch her grow up. He could spend all of his time. It's like having a virtual version of her. But if the computer is able to simulate her past, present, and future so completely that that she is effectively a real person, it goes past AI and the computer is just creating reality, then maybe in Forrest's mind that's enough. And that tracks with the scene we saw last week where he's asking Katie, is this possible? Like I can imagine the question that he asked her being, can a quantum computer working under a deterministic model simulate a person?
Yeah, I mean, like,
right, a real person who's died.
He would. Isn't that like making like the world's most fucked up Tamagotchi? Like he's like, right? Like that's in my head. That's immediately what I was just like, oh my god, he's making a virtual pet. We get to see Jamie and Lily having a very much needed conversation after Jamie spirited her out of this mental institution, which emphasized two things to me. One, that Jamie is a very, very good, sweet, kind-hearted person. And two, he's also probably not the brightest crayon in the box because his first impulse is to go to the media, and my like knee jerk was just like, oh baby, no. Like don't do that.
Yeah.
And
well, Lily is definitely right when she says like, I am now an escaped mental patient talking about conspiracy theories of murders that didn't happen, and it wouldn't go well. She's 100% right.
Which I think is exactly what Kenton's plan was. Like no matter what happened with this, mental institution gambit, it now has discredited Lily, like no matter what. It doesn't matter what she does now.
Yeah.
Because this is always going to come back to bite her.
I thought it was interesting also that Jamie lies to her about what happened to his hand. And then later on, Forrest calls him, they're talking about his, technology work, his security work. But he says, are you offensive or defensive? Which I assume, means something in the tech world, but means something else in a narrative sense as far as like literally his character. He's defensive, whereas Lily is offensive. And we've seen it over and over, the two very different ways their characters deal with things.
Yeah.
And I thought this very small white lie to protect her from the information of what Kenton did to him was another interesting example of that.
For sure. And he also just kind of off the cuff makes a joke when Lily is going to go back to Forrest and Katie and have a conversation, and she wants Jamie to stay out of it, and I am with Lily on this one. I was very much like, yeah, Jamie, just stay here. And he kind of makes a gag about how he's going to sit around and watch cartoons and just wait till she calls him to, and I was like, he says it in like a very glib way, like obviously he's not going to do that, but in my head I was like, no, do that. That's a great idea. Like, please just stay safe. Now
their next move as the viewer watching it, it's good and I like it. From their perspective, why the would they go to Forrest's house? Why do they think this is a good idea?
I mean, it's hard to tell. Like, on one hand, I kind of want to give them the easy way out and just say like, well, of course they do it because they were always going to do it. I want to start talking like Dr. Manhattan over here. But in like a narrative sense, I can understand Lily in a sense, like deciding that she's going to just go right back to Forrest, because now that she has at least more information, like the last time she talked to Forrest, it was before she had an actual conversation with Anton, right? Like this was before everything started spinning out of control so completely. And then since then, she's only been dealing with Kenton. This is her wanting to go back to the source without any sort of like mediation, because going through Kenton is obviously a dead end, you know, in more ways than one, because it's very, very dangerous. And so, I don't know. I mean, I can track, at least in as much as, you know, Lily is kind of a reckless, dangerous person, and I am not that I can understand why she would want to go to Forrest. I don't think that she anticipated Katie being there. I don't think anybody did.
I can understand why Lily would want to talk to Forrest without any pretense, because the last time they spoke was right after she saw the video of Sergei lighting himself on fire, and she at that time had no real reason to believe that is not what had occurred. Like hacking his phone, meeting with Anton, that all happened after that. And since then, the only person at Amaya with which she's had any contact has been Kenton. Like, she didn't even know Katie existed, which is surprising because in the first episode, Sergei met with Katie and Forrest. So it seems like Katie is like Forrest's right-hand man within the company. But as we learn in this episode, Katie is simply the lead designer of devs. So if you're not within devs, you wouldn't know who she was, I guess. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems, even for Lily, it seems unbelievably reckless knowing that Kenton, who is Forrest's head of security, has just had her committed by having a psychiatrist lie about her mental state, and she's now escaped and she goes straight to Forrest. Like, yes, at this point they can drop the pretenses and they can have a real conversation. She can get some answers. And I guess the answer is she just doesn't really care about her personal safety anymore. Like, she doesn't care what happens to her. Like, she's just hoping, you know, best case scenario maybe for her, like, she gets answers from Forrest and then Kenton f***ing kills her like he killed Sergei.
I mean, maybe, but kind of think back to the conversation that Lily and Jamie had about, like, what are their options here? Like, they can't run, they don't have enough money, they can't stay off the grid, these people can find them anywhere. Like, what are they going to do? Sit in that hotel with $40 until they die, or until someone checks in and they have to leave and then they live on the street? Or, I mean, I think that Lily is so backed into a corner that the only logical step, like the only step that could possibly be productive in some way in her head, is to go to Forrest. Because every other step that is viable right now is just going to keep them spinning their wheels or end up with either of them kind of like lost in a drift.
One other thing I wanted to bring up between Forrest and Jamie is Forrest assuring Jamie that it's all going to work out. What do you think he means?
Forrest delivers this line like so friendly, like he's so upbeat, and it genuinely feels like something that like your dad would say to you, like, oh, like I'm upset, like I did, like something bad happened at school, and like your parent is gonna come over and be like, it's all gonna work out, kid. Like that's the read that I had on this moment, which like doesn't apply to Forrest, who literally knows, like who is the only person in the world aside from Katie, I guess, who like can literally with authority say that something is going to work out or it won't, because he has the technology to tell him that it will or it won't.
On one hand, yeah, they can look into the future, and that's why Forrest knows on every level it's not going to work out. It's not going to be fine. And so he's just fully and completely, utterly lying to Jamie. He is deceiving Jamie in that scene, and it's easy to forget that. Because I found myself watching the scene going, well, maybe Forrest knows something, you know, that Jamie doesn't know. And then the second time I watched it, I went, Forrest and Katie both know very well that something catastrophic for the fabric of reality is going to happen. This is a good transition to talking about Lily and Katie's conversation, because a lot of what Katie says to Lily is things that we already knew or had inferred or intuited in some way based on past episodes. But what she gives is the most clear explanation that we've received yet of what exactly Devs does. And I thought the pen, which was so conspicuous when they walked into that room, I thought like this is like some James Bond like spy pen, it's gonna explode, or it's recording them or something. The answer was much more simple, which is that it's just a visual to explain this, and the way that they explain it with the cause and the effect of the pen, you give the computer the pen rolling, you can see backward it was pushed, you can see forward when it's gonna stop. Now extrapolate that and apply it to all of reality. I thought was such a good, concise explanation. And Lily, clearly, she gets it.
And then Katie immediately transitions with, I think this for you is where it's going to get hard. And this is the bombshell of the episode to me. Like, this is where I was like, suddenly like on the edge of my seat, like, oh my God, okay, I get it. Here are the stakes.
Yes.
It's when Katie explains that in less than 24 hours, something so catastrophic is going to happen that they can no longer determine cause and effect. Like, something stops the laws of determinism from working in reality, and that something is going to have to do with Lily. And this entire scene reminded me so much of that episode of Watchmen. A guy walks into a bar.
God walks into a bar.
Yeah. Cal and Angela sitting on opposite sides of the table, and Cal very calmly laying out the exact path of this life that he knows Angela's about to lead, and Angela being like, well, that. I'm not going to do that. If you're telling me, why do I have to do this? Which, I mean, I think that's Lily in this moment. She's like, well, screw it. I'm not going to do anything that you're saying. But Katie's so confident in the ability of, you know, determinism up to this point to whatever is going to happen to make sure that Lily is not going to deviate from this path at all. And it's so hard to think about, because really you want to side with Lily, right? Like, you want to just be like, okay, just go to Mexico. Like, just like, you're, you know, like,
I want her to drive. Yeah, I want her and Jamie to go drive to Mexico and prove Katie wrong. But at the same time, it made me think, I mean, a breakdown in the rules of cause and effect, a breakdown in determinism. Mm-hmm. If Katie and Forrest's worldview is correct, is a breakdown in the laws of reality, mm-hmm. Of the universe. And like, you know, the episode, I think the way that they deliver this information is so incredible and mm-hmm. so effective. In a different show, this would be the elevator pitch. This would have been the first scene of the first episode.
Right.
You know, like, we've developed a computer that can see the future in 48 hours. we can't see, it's only static. Like, sorry, my CSI voice. That information would have been presented right away, and that would be like the mystery of the show. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it took until episode 6 to get this in devs is really, I love this show so much. But the back to my point, the way that it's presented, it makes me want to think, like, what could possibly be that catastrophic? It could be something as simple as not folding your arms, putting your hands in your pockets instead, which is the conversation that Katie and Forrest had. It could be something as simple as Lily not going to devs.
Yeah.
Or Lily going to devs and not dying there. Mm-hmm. Like, just maybe for the rules of determinism to break down, only one thing has to change. Mm-hmm. And this was the moment. Like, Forrest and Katie subscribe to this worldview, so anything they foresee, they're not gonna do it differently, and they're not gonna try to change it because they don't feel like they actually have the ability to do so. Mm-hmm. But Lily, who sees the world differently, has been given information about the future. You're going to be in this place at this time, and something is going to happen. Mm-hmm. She believes in free will still. She's not convinced by Katie. She says, this is bullshit. You're mm-hmm. delusional. So maybe simply the belief that she can change this gives her the power to do so, and maybe that is the breakdown in cause and effect that they've been anticipating. Mm-hmm.
But the big question then is that, does that make Lily a hero, or does that make her the ultimate villain of the show? Because what does the breakdown of cause and effect actually mean? Does it mean that the world literally ends? Or does it mean that just suddenly everything that, you know, like the quantum computer was calculating is now just wrong?
Now, the other big reveal in this episode is that Kenton was there the whole time, not knowing what was going on inside Forrest's house between Katie and Lily, but watching Forrest and Jamie play Frisbee in the street. For Kenton, I imagine, must be weird, because I think we learned definitively here that he's not in on, you know, what Devs is up to. Like, Forrest tells Kenton what Kenton needs to know for Kenton to do his job, because this was a question that we had in the past, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this whole moment really does make it seem like Kenton is about to go rogue. Like, he is at the end of his rope. He is a non-believer, you know, whether or not he knows or just knows and doesn't care or what have you is kind of immaterial at this point. Like, Kenton is not a believer in this, like, the lack of free will in the world. He is seeing this happen and believes that Forrest is about to, you know, do something stupid that is going to get Kenton in trouble. Kenton has a vested interest.
Yeah, Kenton's looking out for himself.
Exactly. I think we're about to see Kenton really throw a wrench in the works here.
Kenton could be the reason why Lily dies at Dev's, or Kenton could be the reason why this whole thing gets screwed up. Or maybe Katie and Forrest are, because when Lily and Jamie arrive, Forrest says she's here. Like, they're not surprised. They know this is coming, so maybe they know that Kenton is in the car outside, and this is still all part of the plan.
I really get the impression that for as worried as Kenton is, Forrest and Katie are not concerned at all. Whether or not they knew that Kenton was going to be there or not, I don't think that they would care.
We do get a really cute moment between them.
I'd say I'm in like with you.
It's kind of awkward, but it's awkward in the same way that like Sergey and Lily's conversation that Katie was spying on last episode was awkward, where it seemed like a genuine moment.
Yeah.
Which can be uncomfortable. It can feel voyeuristic for us to be watching it. I think the show is really good at showing us those moments. Katie admitted that she told Lily everything, but not everything. And the one thing she left out is that Lily's going to go to Dev's. She's going to do something. And the one thing she left out is that Lily's going to die there. Do you think if she told Lily that, Lily really wouldn't show up?
I mean, I think that even the most, like, Katie is obviously the most faithful, and, you know, the most faithful believer, the most devout believer in the system, but I do think that she has, I mean, we watched her all last episode kind of supervising to make sure that everything is still kind of intact. And I think that is carrying over to this. I think that there is still a little bit of anxiety in her, especially, like, there's this giant unknown looming just over the horizon. I think she kind of wants to she's going to demonstrate her faith as best she can, but she's also going to, you know, make sure that she's holding a trump card still, because she wants to make sure, you know, she wants to have some insurance that this is all going to work out the way that it's supposed to, even though the way it works out might mean an end to everything.
Well, the way it works out,
I don't know, Katie's a really tough nut to crack.
The way that it works out is that they don't know how it's going to work out. And they seem, but they seem weirdly like nonchalant about it. Like, they don't seem all that stressed out about it, right? Which, given that these are two people who are used to seeing the future and knowing what's going to happen, it's weird the way that she talks about it. Like, hey, it's almost here. It's not months away anymore. You know, it's ours. It's like they're so resigned to whatever is going to happen. It's so it's like, as human of a moment as this is, that little part of it is strangely like alien to me. Like, I can't imagine acting that way given what they know is about to, or what they suspect is about to occur. The other big thing that happens at the end of the episode is Jamie and Lily hooking up. How do you feel about that?
I feel like Jamie can just do so much better. Like,
that big sigh really says it all.
Yeah, like, I like Lily a lot, and I like Jamie a lot, and I just think that it's hard to do, I should say, is that it's hard to write a narrative where you like both of your main leads, who you, like, they, you know, are ostensibly romantic leads or what have you, but, like, they're both very, very good characters, but the show has done such a good job of mirroring them as, you know, complete opposites, and not in like the like, oh, opposites attract kind of way, but in like a way that means that
no, they're incompatible.
Exactly. Like, we know so well that they're so bad for each other, even though they're both really interesting, engaging characters. And I think that it's threaded that needle in such an interesting way. So this moment is not victorious. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, finally, or like, yay, Jamie's finally getting, like, they're getting back together. It just feels like another, like, oh no, this is gonna be bad, isn't it? Like, that's what this, like, really just iced that cake for dread in my head. It was just like, oh god.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's but that feels realistic to me. Like, hooking up with your ex in real life is rarely a positive thing, right?
Right.
It's not like a rom-com where two people who are destined to be together like overcome some past, like, that's not realistic. This felt more realistic in that we're watching it happen going, this isn't good.
Also, we had Pete back. Pete Watch 2020 continues.
Oh, Pete Watch 2020.
Oh, thank God.
Hell yeah.
He's still okay. Kenton did not drive by and, like, off screen.
He's chilling.
I like the fact that, like, Pete and Lily have this, you know, sort of almost like this like camaraderie almost like oh I've been waiting for you, I've been looking out for you, what have you, and Lily's over there like, oh, get some sleep, Pete. Like it just seems like they're a very cute little friendship, and I'm the fact that they're a cute little friendship makes me really, really nervous.
Did we talk about the contrast already between Pete and Stuart's homeless neighbor? Because one of those homeless neighbors is much better at warning the characters about stranger danger than the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Stuart gave that guy a beer, and that guy didn't say, oh, by the way, like, an androgynous 19-year-old person
broke in through your roof.
He climbed into your RV however long ago and is sitting there in the dark like a f***ing weirdo. The one other thing I wanted to mention was a YouTube comment that we got last week from Tommy H, who says his daughter hasn't been born yet. And this rocked my world. This blew up my entire perception. I don't know that I believe this or subscribe to this theory, but we should talk about it because it is possible. He's designed his whole company around this little girl who doesn't exist yet because they've seen her in the future.
No, there's no way. Like, there's no.
So they've seen her in the future, and he's real worried about his future loss. And now it's the movie Arrival by Denis Villeneuve.
Oh my god. But no, like that can't make any sense because everybody seems to know. Like, it seems like there's some sort of like historical record of Forrest law. Like, people around Forrest who aren't like close to him or whatever. Like, it seems like this is like a known historical event. At least
so he
in, like,
says
the
to
terms
Jamie,
of, like,
he says to Jamie, everybody knows my tragedy.
Yeah, exactly.
But that could. But he explicitly doesn't say what the tragedy is. So it's like just open-ended enough that I'm like, his daughter hasn't been born yet? I don't think so. But it's fun to think about.
It is fun. I mean, maybe like there's 2 episodes of this show left. Like I feel like things are about to get buck wild.
That was Devs episode 6, and of course our best attempt to break it down and explain just what the hell is happening. Please subscribe to GameSpot Universe. Hit us up on Twitter. I'm Rogue Cheddar. Meg is Rusty Polished, and we will